What you attend to takes time. You take time doing what you attend to. And you take time spending money also, but we're not talking about money or time. We're just talking about attention. And it's your thoughts. If we pass it off as inconsequential or unimportant, so whatever it is that grabbed your attention, whatever called you, attracted your attention, if you, in your mind, in your perspective, say it's inconsequential or unimportant, then our thoughts and actions indicate an unconscious response to that which attracted our attention. Hello, how are you?
I am really great. How are you?
Good. You have a minute to talk? Or an hour?
Yes, I do.
All right, great. Great. For any of you who are listening to this, this is my daughter and myself. We're talking about different things and taking deep dives and tangents into different topics as we do from time to time and as we enjoy. Would like you to become involved if you care to, and we'll share with you our connections. But if you're listening to this, it has a connection, so you can make comments, you can get to us. Just let you know, these are things we're thinking about, but we haven't written any of this out. This is a live conversation.
This is not scripted at all.
Yeah, we're not trying to say that we've got the answers for it either, but we just have some ideas. And so we're going to bounce ideas off and see what new we can come up with that neither of us have thought of before. So the topic for the day is just a tiny thing.
Just a little tiny topic. Nobody talks about this ever.
Yeah, it's the littlest thing that can dwell in your heart. And that's the way they say it is. Tiniest, smallest thing that can dwell in your heart, but large enough to feel the expanse of the universe. So it is, of course, if you could guess from just that description, there's only one thing you could describe as that, and that is God. So this God, is that a matter to be treated?
Well, it's a topic to be discussed.
And do we know anything about him, God?
Well, just by asking that, you imply that there is something to be known about this
because
theoretical idea.
I used a pronoun.
Yes. You turned God into a male.
Right off the bat, I said about him. And how could he be small enough to dwell in my heart and fill the universe? That's not a person that big. You're not going to have a being
You've just
that can do that.
Also confined God into something that can be felt and is a being too. Like, it's a male and he dwells in your heart.
And he dwells somewhere. So that's identifying.
What else do you believe about God? Tell me. Tell me more about God, and then I will identify your beliefs through what you say.
Is that how the game is played? The God game? We're playing a game with God by what you conceive, what you believe, what you say, how you characterize that name, that word, depends what your beliefs are.
Yeah. What you believe about that word.
That is like your language. If you don't have language for it, you can't really describe it. But if you start describing it, however you want to describe something, say it's God or say it's green Jell-O salad, you're going to use the words you understand to describe that. And that's going to show your perspective of it.
Do you believe you can start speaking in tongues and perhaps start using words that you don't know to describe God through inspiration and revelation?
No, that sounds too Japanese. That's not tongues. I don't know what tongues would sound like.
Well,
I don't know Japanese, but it sounded too much like other dialects that I've heard.
You're drawing on your background anyway.
Try speaking in tongues. Give me what that might sound like.
I am too embarrassed to give it a go.
No, don't be too embarrassed. I tried it and it sounded Japanese to me. What's it going to sound like?
That's your personality. Your personality is a try it no matter what kind of guy. Like
and you're not going to do it?
I don't want to.
So your God view doesn't allow you to do that. You're too self-absorbed.
Yes.
You'll be embarrassed
I would
in
be...
this anonymous setting.
Right.
to try what tongues might sound like? Because that speaking in tongues, and that comes up from the God type centered language. I mean, people that talk about God will talk about tongues.
Isn't speaking in tongues just being able to speak another language that other people might understand? Like, isn't it directly translatable to other languages in existence?
And see, and even making that description. So you're making a description that identifies what your knowledge base is, your perspective of it is that it is a valid language from somewhere else that you just don't understand. You're going to speak in a foreign tongue, speaking in tongues.
Yeah, I thought I had heard some testimonials in the religion that I was raised in regarding being able to speak in tongues and having the people that they're speaking to understand them. And it was really important that
they understood that.
Yeah.
Okay. There's probably stories that way. Speaking in tongues, though, there's talk of an Adamic language that is no longer on the earth. That is the tongues that people would speak. If you're going to speak most closely to God, you'd speak that language that Adam spoke when God created him. And that type of language that we don't have any connection with now is what I have in the back of my brain, in my understanding, that could be the tongues.
That's your definition of tongues.
Right. It could be God's language. We don't know the perspective that we're talking from. We spoke about, what was that book, The Noticer, that we discussed perspective. All we need is a little perspective, because everything we say and be is from this perspective we hold. We need to try to attend other people's perspectives to gain better understanding. So with this God question, everyone has their own perspective on where God is and what that word represents. And it's an assumption. Does anyone know? Is there a direct knowledge? I mean, we talked about truth. What is the truth in God?
Does anyone know? There are people that say that they know, and they would have other people believe that that person knows.
Do we know stories of people who have seen God?
I know of the Joseph Smith story.
There's a famous story that started a religion, or began the dispensation of the fullness of times.
That one religion that they're off the top of my head, I can't say specifically what other people would have said that they saw God, but I know that there are others who say they have seen God.
Other individuals or religions?
Always individuals. I mean, outside of the peoples of the book of, individuals for sure. I mean, it's interesting that, so in the Bible, they can't see God because they would have to be translated to a different form to be able to see God.
Those scriptural, in the Bible is the scriptural statement that no man can see God and live.
Yeah, like Moses and the burning bush. Like he can only see a burning bush. He can't actually see God, right?
Well, no, he when he went to the Mount Sinai, he spoke with God face to face, and he came down glowing. So he came down perhaps in a translated form. The people were afraid of him when he came back because he was glowing. They said, "Wow, how did you do that? What aliens got you?" He said it was God.
And mainstream Christian religion, Jesus is God. They're all one and the same. So anybody who says they've seen Jesus are implying that they've seen God too.
Okay, right. Because Jesus said as part of it, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So that was one of his statements directly. But then he said, I'm returning to my Father. However, that's the whole, you can get into the semantics of what words they used, but you'd have to understand the original Greek or Arabic that it was written in. And then we know that all that writing didn't happen until 300 years later, after Christ. We don't have the books that they were reading at the time of Christ, and we don't have the books they were reading when Moses was there or what they were writing then. None of that record is actually available. The Dead Sea Scrolls, that some of those things are 300 or 400 years before Christ, and so you do have some of that. So there's actual things in antiquity that show these stories are a lot older than, are as old as they say they are. But we're talking about just God in general. The thing that got me thinking about this, let's just start with that. God is a big question. I attended a Jordan Peterson lecture in January, one of his We Who Wrestle with God tour. And of course, he wrote the book. And that book, I've begun reading it. I think I'm just 30 pages into a 500-page book. So there's a lot in there, I'm sure. But in those top 30 pages, he deals with what a lot of the things that he spoke about in January when I attended this event. I kind of summarized my thoughts of that event. And he said, I'm going to treat the topic of questions I've been posed many times. Do you believe in God? And anyone who's seen Jordan Peterson for years knows that a lot of people have asked him that question. Do you believe in God? And he's always skated the answer.
Everybody asks him that because it's so fun to argue with him after he won't answer the question. I think
Yeah.
it's so fun to listen to the argument between him and whoever he's speaking with. Whoever asked him, do you believe in God? What is God? And he never actually, I mean, he gives definition. Like if you piece all of his answers together, it could be a complete definition perhaps, but it's never, I believe in the mainstream Christian God that everybody thinks is God. He never says that, right?
And can anyone say that? I think that's his point. He says, I've thought enough. I've thought enough in my life that I know I can't just say that, because that's not the God I believe in. Definitely. That's not who it is. I believe in God, but not the God from the definitive religious standard churchy type God.
Yeah, the churchy God.
He gives a point here. I'm going to go into this book, page 16, where he talks about pride. He's talking about taking the Lord's name in vain in this little bit, taking the Lord's name in vain. And he says it's not the careless sin of speaking poorly about the name or swearing or using the name of God in some outer context. It's a much more serious error of claiming allegiance to and understanding of the divine order, while in fact pursuing only self-serving goals. So that, as the sin of taking the Lord's name in vain, is assuming that you know who God is. You're going to tell everyone, this is who God is. Now bring money to my church so that I can live and preach to you about the God that we know and believe and love. So that's his way of saying that is, and that's in the Book of Mormon from the LDS side, that's priestcraft. That's using God for your own benefit, for your own gain, which is taking the name of the Lord in vain and not using it as the God position. He spoke for an hour and a half on that one question. Do you believe in God? An hour and a half on that, identifying. And then, we talk for an hour and a half and we find when we get to the end of the conversation, maybe we reach some conclusions and maybe not. I thought in my notes and my understanding of where he's talking from and hearing him many years, I've listened to him for years. I thought he came to a very reasonable, common conclusion. And I thought I was very satisfied in his answer. He gave the full answer. He actually ended with this phrase. He closed with a simple phrase, this is what I believe. So it was clear. But then as I was talking to people afterwards, a couple of the people, and it was the common consent of the group that I was talking to at the time, that he never gave his answer. He didn't say yes or no.
Huh.
He didn't say anything. He said, I was convinced the arguments were good, is how I wrote it. The comment was, I didn't hear a yes or a no. In connecting his points from my frame of reference, I would hope to show. And I believe that what he did was appropriate and complete, but it took inference. He didn't just say, these are the attributes of God, and these are what we believe in, and I believe in these attributes, this God. So it's obvious, though, that God means different things to different people.
Yeah. I wonder how he would respond if somebody asked him, do you believe in the God I believe in? Like, what do you say? No, absolutely not. I do not believe in that God.
I believe he could answer that question. And I think he would say no. Limiting God, and he would use this phrase. And again, we can't even discuss Jordan Peterson, and he's alive on this earth. He's just a human, but we can't say what Jordan Peterson would say in this. So how can we even presume or assume? That's what he said What was the biggest part of this? Claiming allegiance to and understanding the divine order. We can't claim to have allegiance to the divine order. I can't claim to have allegiance to Jordan Peterson. I've never spoken with him. I've listened to his things. I don't know him from anybody. I can't have allegiance to him, and I can't understand him. I can't even claim to understand Jordan Peterson. How can I understand a God that has no proof that he even is a being or an idea or a concept?
Could you claim allegiance to the Jordan Peterson in your head? The one that you think you know?
Or if someone asked me the question.
From what you know of Jordan Peterson, would you claim allegiance to him?
An understanding of the things I understand. Yeah, but it's the things I understand. So it's a personal belief. And that's why I think he ended with the statement, this is what I believe. He didn't say this is God.
This is the belief.
This is what I believe.
Right.
Yeah, it's not the belief, it's a belief. It's my belief. This is what I believe. So, and that's all we can say about anybody. I can't even say that I believe or have allegiance to you. You're you, and I'm me. I many times don't even know what I'm thinking about something until I discuss it long enough in my head with myself. And then I can come to a conclusion of something.
So you're not sure if you have allegiance to yourself or not, really.
And are you?
It's
sure.
Yeah, it's difficult. From what I know of myself, I like myself, and I would stand up for myself.
And you're good enough, and you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you.
Right.
What was his name? Saturday Night Live? Gary Smalley, I think, something like that.
That was a long time ago.
I'm good enough, and I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
We will link that in the show notes if you can find it.
Yeah, if I can find it. And that's all we really know about ourselves, is that we're doing the best we can. So a direct yes or no answer. So we were talking about Jordan Peterson. You asked the question, if someone said, do you believe in the God I believe in? Here's what I believe. Do you believe in this God? And he would say, I think he could equivocally say, no, I don't believe in a God that has limitations that you just described. The parameters you put on him, that he's a he, that he has a position somewhere, that he's here or there, I don't know. So I don't have a belief in that. And you have specific references. The first vision of Joseph Smith with the LDS faith, he has a description standing directly over the head, and he pointed to the other saying, this is my beloved son, and saying that is God. And that's a presentation of God. And it may have been exactly God. God may be exactly that. 99.8% of the world who are not LDS don't believe in that God. Does that make it true or not true? Because there's only 1.8% or whatever of the people in the world that have that view. Numbers don't matter in this discussion.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many people do or do not believe in something that is actually the truth, right? It's just something is the truth. Is there a one definition of God then that is the truth? And most of us, or all but one, or even none of us, even so far in history, have found that yet.
Either found it or been revealed to. So finding something is that it's revealed to you. And there have been a number of people who said, God appeared to me and revealed to me his nature. And that's what they're testifying of. Muhammad testified of something like that. Buddha and Confucius and these major religious leaders have said, I understand the nature of God, and this is what I'm doing. Moses set up his whole system based on a direct conversation with God, who he identified was God. With the finger of God wrote the commandments.
God has a finger. We know that based on Moses' testimony, or the testimony of whoever wrote Moses' story down.
Right. And the brother of Jared from the Book of Mormon, he touched the stones with his finger, and he saw God's spirit. And he says, this is the spirit that I will take on in flesh. And that was Jesus Christ talking to him, but he viewed him as God. There's stories of all that, but that's just their perspective. Again, I think perspective is important here. We can only talk from the perspective we have, from the words we have, the jargon we understand. We don't talk in the Adamic language even, and that language probably still doesn't understand God. We don't talk in God's language. We can't. He hasn't given us that thing in this world that says this is God's language, and you go to this library and you can read and understand God's word. We have our words.
Right. Wait, so the Adamic language is God's language then, because that's what the first humans on earth spoke, and of course they would speak the language of their creator.
It may be what they were attempted to be trained. Of course, Adam's first role was to name all the creations that God made. So his first role was to name all the animals and create names, create a language. I think Adam created the Adamic language. That's why it's called that. It's the language that Adam created. It's not something that God gave him and said, here's the names of everything. Now study this book. He made it up as a human. So they were all created that way, supposedly in the story. Okay, so I think that even Adam didn't speak God's language. God speaks God's language. He may be the only one. I don't know. So that's just something we don't know.
Do you believe in Adam?
Do I believe in Adam? Yeah, sure.
Would you stake your life on Adam being existed in a Garden of Eden without sin?
Before sin, without...
Before sin, yeah.
Before choices. He was given a choice and he had the chance to create sin, perhaps, and Satan was there as a snake helping to create sin. I fully believe that story. I don't know what it looked like.
Okay.
I've seen movies of it. I've seen things. I've never received a vision of it, so I don't know. I don't have a revelation from God saying this is what it looked like.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, if someone held a gun to your head and told you to renounce that story as truth, and you did renounce it to save your life, would you be lying in your renunciation, or would you be saying the truth?
That's an interesting presentation. Everything we say is a lie to another perspective. And everything is the truth because it was said.
Okay.
So that's a whole other philosophical realm. And that's what, I get in trouble with that all the time.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it doesn't matter that it's a lie or the truth. What matters is, do you value something more? I would value my life more than that story. So I guess in discussing values, yes, I'd let the guys say whatever they want. It's not going to offend anybody. There's no God that's going to take that renunciation as a final judgment offense and say, you said it. I don't care there's a gun to your head. You said it. Now you're dead. You're done. No more kingdom of God for you. It's not, I don't think it's that arbitrary that someone could force you to break a covenant based on your value system. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Right. Right, of course.
An interesting tangent that we may be able to touch at some point.
Okay.
Just the general fact of God. Jordan Peterson, as he discussed, he had what I termed as two pillars in his argument. So the first pillar, well, he talked about three things. So three pillars. One, he didn't talk about hardly at all. He didn't connect these together. So that was my, you had to infer a lot of stuff in his hour-and-a-half conversation to piece it together. So I'm going to attempt to piece that together, and we'll use his book here a little bit. He said the first thing you need to be considered, do you believe in God? Do is an action. That first word is just do. So that's fine. But the first word to really consider is you. What you are you talking about? What you are we to consider? And he spent probably 40 minutes on you. Identifying, is it the you that you believe, or is it the you other people see? How many yous can we come up with for us? Do you see a way? How else could you describe you?
Yeah, the real question is there a you? Is
there a you?
Is there one you to be defined? Because I mean, as we seem to keep coming across, there's got to be an actual you, because somewhere in there's an actual you.
Do you remember where Cleon Skousen said you are? Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember it.
So it's that right, when you think of where you are, it's not here in your heart, because that's below you. Right behind your eyes, there's that hypothalamus or something right there in the middle of your brain. And your brain is really above it. And your ears are out to the side of it. And your neck is behind it. So you know that you are right there somewhere in your head. And your eyes are even in front of it. So it's not your eyes. Your nose is out in front. But there's something right in the middle of your head that you is at. So that's your physical location is there in your head. And it's not on your arms. It's not in your extremities. But you know you have this body you're operating. But you are right there physically. What about your thought process? The you that thinks.
Is that not the same as the one that's right in the middle of your head?
Depends on where you think, I suppose.
Can you think about yourself? Maybe they're separate things, because to think about oneself is to be thinking about something separate than the thinker, right? I mean, what is that quote? I think, therefore I am. Is that implying that the thinker is the thinker of itself is the same as itself?
So that seems to be that you can think and take a perspective outside of yourself. So your thoughts can be anywhere. You know, I'm lost in my thoughts. I'm lost in my thoughts.
Your thoughts are not you, then, what you're saying.
Yeah, your thoughts aren't you. They're somewhere else. And they can be, you can think, you can close your eyes and put yourself anywhere in your thoughts. You can be on the beach, and appropriately on the beach, entirely. And with hypnosis, you can go anywhere if you're appropriately managed. Or you can, in your dreams, your thoughts, you know, is it the you that dreams? That's another you that isn't the you that's physically here, or even the you that's thinking. There's some unconscious dreaming world that you are in, subconscious dreaming world.
I was just watching an episode of Black Mirror where there's two astronauts out in space who link up with a replica of their body on Earth so that they can still live on Earth and yet do their work in outer space. And their you is up in outer space, but their consciousness, while they're laying in the bed with their eyes closed, linked up, their consciousness is on Earth, experiencing the Earth stuff. And it's like, does that sound like anything like what we're talking about?
Is it true? Is it real? Can that occur? Is it a quandary that can happen? Can your body be somewhere? So your body's somewhere and your consciousness somewhere else.
Yeah. Is that the imagination? You're imagining you're on the beach, or you're dreaming, and that's the you that's in a different place, lost in your thoughts.
You know, they were on space because they had a requirement to be on space and work there. So they were out in the space system doing their work there, but they had their body on Earth because they liked to enjoy that. Why did they have the body on Earth? What was it doing?
It was just living life, like with their families and working on their farm, or working at you know.
So it had a job. Their avatar had a job over there too.
Yeah. Well, not a job, not their career. Their career is astronaut. You know, they were living their life. They were taking care of their families and doing fun and interesting things with them on Earth. It's just in this episode, it was a way to keep the astronauts tied to their lives, and their families knew that this was a replica body, and that their consciousness, like their real body, was actually on, like everybody in the world knew that it was a replica, and they would point it out like, oh, are you that guy? How does it feel to be in this body? You know, like everybody knew.
But there is the you. I think that identifies you too. I mean, a rut. If you're working a job that you hate and you just have to go to work and you numb out every time you get to the job, and you're just following the procedures, is it that you that has to believe in God, or is it the you that's conscious at home and playing with the grandkids? Is that the you that we're talking about? Or is it the you that is having a conversation with his spouse? Is that the you? So which you do you want to consider? Because each position, each perspective of your own individual, and is it I think he identified the you from the past. Is it the you that you lived yesterday and that you grew up? Is it the you at 15 years old and what you knew then? Or is it that 72 and what you'll know then? Which you do you want to pinpoint as the perspective you're going to talk from when you say, do you believe in God? So you is important. And he says that's the important pivotal point of this whole discussion is what you. which you do you want to consider? The ethereal, the you of your thoughts, the ethereal you that there is no physical concept of, or the physical you inside your head. There's the primary, we use this term too, the primary answers, like the primary colors, or, you can have 6,000 different colors, but you've got 4 or 5 primary colors. You can speak in just that language, in the most basic primary language, or you can have all kinds of, the you has that many different connections.
An entire color spectrum of connections.
Of who you are, even. So that being the pivot point, then there are 2 pillars that this connects to. He says the next word to consider is belief. And belief has 2 pieces to it. So what you believe in, it's first, I'm just going to read how I wrote it. Dr. Peterson spoke of the calling, or that which attracts your attention. First in the periphery, then begging focus. So it's what grabs your attention. That is a calling. You're called to something. You're called to a cat, or a squirrel, your ADHD, and those things call you. And he says that's important. He identified that those callings, what grabs your attention, is given you directly from deity, from God, from the greatest good, the universe, or whatever name you want to place there. He said that's where those things come from. So he's putting that out as the first pillar of his argument, that what attracts your attention comes from this God statement.
Now, what if your attention is attracted by an addiction that you have? Does that also come from this God? Or something that you don't want to be called attention to? What if you're walking down the strip in Las Vegas and there's flyers littering the ground with topless ladies and your attention is called to them? Does that mean that God, your God, is drawing your attention to that?
That's the calling. You're there. And there's the question of Adam and Eve. Let's frame that, because it's the same question. But Adam and Eve in the garden, naked and unashamed and innocent and pure, there was not a sexual desire in that thing. But the supposition, Satan then comes up and says, here, taste of this, whatever it is, the apple is perhaps that's a representation of a sexual desire. So if that's the case, and Satan brings that in, and then first approaches Eve and says, here's this thing, enjoy it. And she says, golly, this is enjoyable. Adam, come on, let's enjoy this thing. And he says, no, I can't, because that wasn't told us not to enjoy that thing. But look, see how enjoyable it is. Oh, okay, yeah, I will. So she says, I enjoy it. Because I enjoy it, I'm going to be kicked out. And so he says, okay, I'll enjoy it too. So they both enjoyed it. And that's the flyers all over the floor of the streets in Vegas. So if you go to Vegas, you know that you're going to see those flyers. I don't know. Last time I was there, I didn't see them. Maybe I wasn't walking in the right places or the wrong places. One or the other. If it's something you don't want, but it still attracted your attention. So God put Adam and Eve in the garden, and that thing was there to attract their attention. He even pointed it out. There's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't take any of that fruit. What does that mean to anyone who's curious? And God did point to them, called them to that.
I mean, maybe they wouldn't have even thought about it if God didn't say, look over there, don't touch that.
Right. And that's like trying to get rid of an addiction. If you think about it all the time, you're not going to get rid of that addiction. You have to replace it with something that you're not thinking about, something else that's just out there.
Okay, so even sinful callings are from God, is what you're saying. Maybe it's an opportunity to do the right thing. God is placing an opportunity in front of you.
An opportunity.
To do the right thing.
It just is. It's not that God's placing it there. It just is. We're in a universe. So he says it's either deity, the universe, or whatever name you wish to place there. God, deity, the greatest good, or the universe. So the universe we're just in the universe. We're here. There's no other place we are. And the universe will give us things. And as the universe presents it to us, maybe it didn't present it to us. Maybe we just happened upon it. But it is in the universe. So God may not have said, here, gentlemen, receive this. He didn't say that necessarily, but the gentleman is where he is, and he sees this, and it's what God has placed in front of him at that second. The universe placed it there, whether he's just walking on the right street in Vegas or the wrong street. So yes, I think that's the plan.
I think I see what you're saying. I think I see that you're saying if you lump the universe in there, I mean, that's another God that many people subscribe to, I guess, is this is a sign from the universe that this is where I'm supposed to be, or
it's the karma idea.
Yeah, it just is. It being is a universe thing.
And that is the is. That's what is mean. It depends on what is means.
Right.
Putting it out there, I think that's kind of what he's trying to present with the calling. You are going to have a perspective, and from your perspective, you're going to see something. Someone looking the other direction isn't going to see what you see. So that calling is just for you. It's not that God wrote a program that said at 4:22 on this day, you're going to see this. That's not in the program. It's not in all the code that's written for your life. But that thing is there. And if your perspective is that way, you're going to see it. And it's going to be that calling. He spoke about the calling that attracts your attention. And it's what you attend to. That's the first pillar. You've got something that is there. There is and is there. That's what I said about that. Much of his examples and personal experience supported this status of life that we all experience. And he just identified a number of ways that what is actually is, and you perceive it from your perspective.
Right.
Something grabs your attention, and we are left with the opportunity to pay attention to it or not. So that's the choice. That's the agency that we have. We can say, that's interesting. I want to turn it over and see what's on the other side of that picture. Or you can just say, glance at the trees. I'd rather look at the trees than the ground right now.
Yeah, the trees were also put there to draw your attention to them, right? By the universe or God or whatever.
Right. And then you say, I've been thinking about lignin in the trees, and I want to think about that a little bit more instead of this on the ground. And it's your opportunity to pay attention to it. That's the first pillar, as I make out the inference, is that God, or at least is God, or at least a representation of what God is. God is everywhere. It's a representation from that God. The God is everywhere around you. And there is that statement. So what is your God? Your God is what you focus on, what you do, what you worship. Maybe I'll bring that in right here. What you choose to pay attention to. And maybe that is the second half. It's the second pillar, is more directly described.
The second pillar of
Jordan Peterson's statement.
Oh, okay. I think Jordan Peterson's definition, like one of his many definitions of what God would be like the highest thing that you value, the highest value you have, right? Nothing could be like what you value the highest. Yeah, nothing could be of higher value than that.
He says your deepest held beliefs, deepest held values is your religious values, and that represents God to you. So that's the question you came up with first. Tell me more about what you say God is, and it'll let me know what your belief is.
Right.
It's the way you describe it. It's your deepest held beliefs, so the way you describe God is going to be your God. So second pillar is, he says, to be conscious about it. That's the quote I got out of what he said. Second pillar is to be conscious about it, pay attention to it, and lend your attention to this calling as though it has importance, because likely it does, is how he said it. So if you receive it as a calling, that thing that you found on the ground, it seems like it has importance, and I'm going to attend to it like it has importance. So if it happens to be a sin, or happens to be, let's just say it is lasciviousness and degeneracy, and you end up with prostitutes.
Okay.
That's the God that drew you there. So yes, I think it's the same thing. It's what grabbed your attention and what you were conscious about. What you put your attention to becomes your God, is how he's putting it. So that's the God we're talking about. It's not some being in the sky, a bit white-bearded, eating grapes.
Yeah. Do you think that this explanation of God that you just gave that you say that Jordan Peterson is giving, that you're all
What
working
I
on
got
it.
from Jordan Peterson. Now it's you got to be clear. Jordan Peterson didn't necessarily give this. That's what I got from what he was saying. So it is still my God. It's only my God that I heard from him.
It's what you created in your mind by listening, right? Would this pass as a God to believe in if you were going through like a temple recommend interview for the LDS Church?
Okay, because one of the interview questions, and these are public questions. They're published. They're everywhere. Do you believe in God, the eternal Father, and in his Son, Jesus Christ, and in the Holy Ghost? That's the question. And there's no other explanation behind it. So with that question that way, God, the eternal Father, his Son, Jesus Christ, and in the Holy Ghost.
That seems to put God into a box, into a package.
Well, it could, or it could be completely open, because they didn't say, this is the God that stands on the throne and Jesus Christ on his right hand and the Holy Ghost is a personage of spirit. It doesn't go through all the description that's in Mormon doctrine, I guess, about who they are. It's just a simple question. And it's a yes or no answer. They said, and that was described with the recommend questions. Simple answer, yes or no. No, I don't believe in a God. If my God has this description behind him, and God is all encompassing, the question isn't, is there a physical, spiritual, heavenly being that was once a man? That's not the recommend question.
Okay, but there is an implication that this question is referring to Joseph Smith's description of God, the being, the physical being that he saw in his vision.
Okay. And I can see that could be the inference of that question, but it's up to the individual to indicate the answer. And I've always said there's discernment. The person asking the question, the priesthood leadership asking the question, has discernment, which may or may not get involved in answers to these questions. We're all humans, and we're just making a determination. Do you believe? Do you strive?
Anything. Do you believe in anything? If you believe in anything, answer yes to this question. Anything at all.
Because this, and if it matches that.
Wait a minute. That's another qualifier, though. That's a higher value than a belief. If I have the highest value, if my highest value is XYZ, but you say, wait a minute, that XYZ doesn't match my ABC, and so therefore that can't be your God because it doesn't match. It doesn't meld with the whole idea of God.
Because the concept here is that I'm going to invite you into my temple if you can match my understanding of God. I've created this wonderful club that you can be a part of if you answer this question. And then you come in and I say, do you believe in ABC? And you say yes. And you say, oh no, I know that you actually believe in XYZ. And that's not ABC. I know XYZ is not ABC. And so no, you can't come in. Or do you say, I believe in XYZ, and you said, do you believe in God, the eternal Father, Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost? But you're saying it from an ABC standpoint, and I'm saying it from XYZ standpoint, and I say yes, because I can match my XYZ to that question, then you're allowed in, right? So God, from God's standpoint, are both of those valid? Is he actually XYZ and ABC? Potentially. So ABC, XYZ, from two different perspectives on the earth, looking up at God, from God in his heavens, looking down, is he actually still the same ABC?
In his heavens, you're putting God and you're defining him as a he, as a being watching.
I'm talking about GHI. My GHI God stands up there in the heavens, looks at everybody. And that's the bubble I'm looking at. So do you have I think we can't put those limitations on God.
Yeah, I feel certain that I could say the table that my laptop is sitting on is God. If I placed high enough value on this table, then it fits under your umbrella of what God is.
And how do I feel about that?
I imagine right now you're like, okay, yeah, sure.
Am I offended? Did you offend me because you said because God's the table under my laptop?
Right. This right here. It is in my room.
Okay, and we're gonna get to that in just a minute, because it's what you worship. You worship God. What you worship is your God.
Okay.
That's what my supposition is.
So could Minecraft be God? Does that fit under your GHI and ABC and XYZ God umbrella? Minecraft also.
So someone answering that specific question, they say this world is the virtual world that is my God. Is Minecraft some people's God? I would say yes.
Yes. And so would that, if someone answered yes to that, could potentially they obtain a temple recommend?
For that question, would they pass that question? Yeah, because there's no definition outside of that question. But that's one of 12 or 14 questions, 18 questions.
Yeah, isn't there
some of them are more specific.
Whole set of scriptures and handbooks and gospel doctrine manuals and everything that is attempting to define what God is, and Minecraft certainly wouldn't fit into those definitions.
Jesus the Christ, where Jesus Christ says, to know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom thou hast sent. This is the whole benefit of man or something. The whole task of man is to know Jesus Christ, to know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom thou hast sent. The entire work of man or something. And Minecraft doesn't include that idea, that concept. So there's nowhere in Minecraft. You do have, I've seen Jesus Christ built in Minecraft. You can do that.
You can build the image of Jesus Christ, but that doesn't mean Minecraft is God.
So your supposition is God is something out there. He's one specific single thing, something, and you have to believe in him if you're going to say, I believe in God.
I am saying that from the standpoint of the interviewer of the temple recommend.
Right. So it seems to be if the interview is making that point, that question, that interviewer from ABC standpoint says, if you don't believe in ABC God, you cannot join my club.
Yeah. And maybe you get lucky and you get an interviewer that does believe in Minecraft God. Like if you perhaps were the interviewer, then everybody would get a temple recommend. Everybody.
Based on that question.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, there are other questions, and anyone who's interested in looking at those interview questions, you can find it. We're not going to post it here. I don't think that would be appropriate.
You don't think that we should?
But you can certainly find them, and there may be other things that have a more specific question, but I even dealt with some of the other more specific questions with the interviewer as I was talking to him at one time. And he said, this only pertains to the question asked. It's like going through a court of law or something. These questions are built specifically for that reason, and they're just yes or no answers. They don't ask for an essay question or write 4 paragraphs about this, give me 150 words, and then I'll see if it passes. It's a yes or no.
Because it's between you and God is what it really is, right?
Right. Do you feel worthy to answer the question this way, and is it appropriate to you? And if it is to you, I'm okay with it. Or my discernment key, whatever, I feel jittery about what you just said. Let's talk about this for a few minutes. And he has that option to talk about it, but it's just getting to the answer of that question. Those are the only things that need to be. He said those questions are written specific for a purpose, and it's yes or no answers. It's not essay. So,
okay.
Interesting. You can't say which God are you really talking about. What Jordan Peterson always says, if he was asked that question, is the interview question, if he went up to the priesthood authority and they asked him, he'd say, which God are you talking about? Because I don't know that I want to state that I believe in God, the eternal Father, His Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost. I don't really understand enough about it to do that. So not no, but here's what I believe. Here's what I believe. Minecraft.
I think if he was in a position to be interviewed for a temple recommend, he would say yes. He would just say yes.
Because he'd know it's a simple yes, no answer. They're not trying to ask a philosophical response to it. They don't need this background of the XYZ God I'm talking about. And his understanding will be different than mine. I know people to understand differently. Okay. So being conscious about it is what you're conscious about, what you pay attention to and lend your attention to. There's another place that I got a statement. You can only spend 3 things in this world. There's only three things that you can spend. You can spend money, you can spend time, and you can spend your attention. There's nothing else you can spend. So it's what you attend to. It's what your attention goes to that you're spending your attention on that he's talking about right here, the second pillar, what you're conscious about and what you attend to. What you attend to takes time. You take time doing what you attend to. And you take time spending money also, but we're not talking about money or time. We're just talking about attention. And it's your thoughts. If we pass it off as inconsequential or unimportant, so whatever it is that grabbed your attention, whatever called you, attracted your attention, if you, in your mind, in your perspective, say it's inconsequential or unimportant, then our thoughts and actions indicate an unconscious response to that which attracted our attention. So if it's unimportant, it'll just pass by as water off a duck's back, or just a leaf floating down the river, and it'll pass by, and it won't be of any value or importance to you, and it won't be part of what God told you. It's just something else in life. And here I'm just going to read this sentence. My correlation of inference here is that by setting our conscious attention to it describes fully our belief, or that believing something is indicated by responding to it in a conscious manner. So your belief is what you attend to. So what comes in front of you is given by God, if you consider that as the first pillar. The second pillar is what you attend to. So you can identify, yeah, in my life, that's God. I saw this Minecraft game today, again, like I've done every day for the last 8 hours, every day for the last 2 years, and I'm attending to it. Therefore, yes, it is my God, this Minecraft game that I'm playing.
So the implication of that then is that God changes. Your God is changing. Like perhaps right now my God is you because you're demanding my whole attention right now.
That's where you're putting your attention.
Yeah, but when we're done, my God will be the dogs because I will need to take them out.
Okay, that's a valid point. Yeah. So is it bound by time, or is it what you attend to that's not bound by time? I mean, we're bound by time here. In 2 hours, we will not still be attending to each other. Guaranteed. In 2 hours, we will not.
Guaranteed. That's a pretty bold claim. We could be. I mean, my laptop is plugged in, and my battery is at 77% on my phone.
Neither of us have any intention 2 hours from now to still be in this position.
Right.
So there's no intention, and that's right. A guarantee is never of any value. You can't guarantee anything because you can't even determine which way the wind's blowing.
Right. God has to be above even right now what you most value. So Minecraft can't be God because you only value that at the highest just when you're there or when you're thinking of it, and maybe for that part of your life.
And that's where he started this out, and I want to frame this around, it's you that's important. It's not God that's important in this question. It doesn't matter at all what God does or who he is or where he is. Do you believe in God? God is the object of the sentence, not the subject. The subject is you. It's not God. It's not up to God to have you believe in him. It's you. So that's I think what he's pointing to here, and how he's said many times in the past. And I guess my belief too. It depends on which God you're talking about. And every you that exists has a belief in God. Yes, this is what I believe, I think is how he ended that. Doesn't matter what you are attending to, what you're talking about, that you has a God. And it may not be the God that this you is thinking about. Every 5,000 people in a room have 5,000 different gods that they are attending to.
Well, I mean, wouldn't it make more sense, more rational sense, I suppose, if all of the 5,000 yous had a very base foundational God that all of the yous deemed to be the highest value, most important, all of yous.
Let me get to this paragraph. This is an interesting thing. And he does describe something, society. You're talking about all the important yous, a society of people. So if you're going to get a group of people together, you're going to create a city or a world or whatever, and have it operate together. You have to have some sort of communication for that, or base understandings. Society can only be adopted in the future only insofar as it attends to and integrates the visions and thoughts, the logos of its citizens. Each individual person in a society has to agree to be in that society. The individual matters in a society. Those who lead, therefore, must serve and foster that divine individuality, aggregate and unite its concerns, gather, amalgamate, and communicate its visionary wants and needs, and transform the law, the necessary, but dead past, into the living and guiding word. So you have to bring necessary dead past. Whatever happened in the past, you got to consider it, but you're living right now in the live thing you're creating. And he talks about this a lot more. I don't know that there's any other real important thing, but there might be. That's an interesting paragraph too. It's on page 33. If we could all understand the same thing, that would be interesting. But is it possible for a group of people all to understand the same thing?
No, it's not. In the same way. It's not possible for them all to understand the same thing in the same way.
Right.
Maybe you have to qualify it within the same
That is the quandary. I think that's the quandary of God, is God being a superhuman, supernatural being, supernatural idea, concept, supreme being, supreme beyond us, an infinite being where we're finite beings. We can't comprehend the God-type language that would even encompass how to describe him. People with these near-death experiences come back and say, I can't even describe what it was like. Here's the best I can say. It was a bright white light and it was pure love. But that's just our words for what it is. We don't know the God words for it.
Is there anything that we could, really, is there anything that everyone can understand the same way, though? I mean, for some reason, I'm thinking of 1 + 1 = 2. 1 and additional 1, together, there are 2. Isn't that understandable completely the same way?
No, definitely not.
Why?
Because if you have one piece of gum and you're chewing it, and you put one more piece of gum in your mouth and you're chewing it, it becomes one.
Okay, so we need to simplify it a little bit more.
You can't simplify that anymore. That's math in one way. You have to be in a certain perspective for math to work.
Okay, so you put everyone into a perspective boundary, and then they can understand the thing.
Yeah, perhaps. You have to have the right stories, the same stories. If you told everyone the same stories and the same archetypical stories for their whole life, that's the purpose the Bible plays. You know, a rule book, that's Minecraft has its rules. You have to operate based on these parameters inside of Minecraft. And it always works. And it always works if you abide these rules. Can you invent a rule that would blow up Minecraft, that would make it not work anymore?
I mean, it is a piece of software, so you could just change part of some code and then it wouldn't work anymore.
Yeah. Isn't it like a 9x9 block or something? How are the blocks defined?
Yeah, I think it's 16 by 16. Yeah.
16 by 16. And that's 16 by 16 bit processing or whatever. If you change it to 8, that will change the whole game. Or if you make that variable, sometimes it's 16, but then it's going to have an algorithm that sends it to 3 right now. It can't be 3 because that wouldn't be a block anymore, but it could be 4.
Well, it could be 3 by 3 by 3. That's what Rubik's Cubes are.
Okay. Yeah, so that's 9. Okay. And if you expand the universe, there's limitations on Minecraft how big the universe can be, because you've got to have computer capability to encompass it. You've got to have it inside. You can't do outside.
Even that's adjustable, though. I mean, if you have a higher RAM capacity on your computer, you can even raise the limit of generated world. Yeah. Or if you have not enough, you can lower the limit. You can say only generate a quarter of the usual size. And that's usually plenty anyway.
It just takes more space, more computer space, memory space, or more electricity to create a bigger world. How does that relate to God? does God have limitations on this world? Apparently there's a limitation to the universe, an edge that now I haven't really studied it, but James Webb Telescope has found another universe next to ours or outside of what our universe seems to be.
I haven't seen anything on that.
So it says this is interesting, but maybe they're just those attention-grabbing things that try to say we believe that this picture it took is outside of our universal limits, and it might be just because we're only calculating that based on what we think, what we're inferring from what we see from this perspective.
Yeah, so potentially there are limits. There's a limit. There's an end to our universe. I feel like I've been taught that God has to still abide within the universal laws. Like there are things he can't do because he has to stay within the boundaries of the laws of the universe.
Now, in that relation to Minecraft, certainly he has to. If you're in this Minecraft world, you can't do something outside of the Minecraft, and God can't do anything outside the Minecraft world either. He can't bring in a 4-bit thing in a 16-bit world. It just isn't going to happen. He will not do it. Not that he can't do it. He could change it from 16 to 4, but he's not going to do it because this is the world. It's a 16-bit world. So perhaps in our vision of God that we do say, yeah, he operates on physical rules. That's what we were talking about, magic at times in the past, and something that we don't understand. It's magic because we don't understand it. But if we understood it, it would no longer be magic. It's just physics. And right now, physics we don't understand, quantum physics and string theory and all that stuff, we're trying to identify, but perhaps God knows how that works. And maybe there's something else that he lives by. It's just from our perspective, he can't go outside this physical realm because that's how he's dealing with us. We're in this Minecraft world. We're in this universe, in this galaxy.
Yeah, and that is assuming that God is a being that does control things and does think, and that you can see in one form, you know.
Right. And assuming that he can see our galaxy, that it's something there, a supernatural being that can see what we're doing and where we are. And if he deals with us, when he deals with us in our 16-bit world, according to those rules that we're operating under.
You just kind of explained God staying within the boundaries of the laws of the universe as if it was a being. Can you explain that in the realm of God being like my deepest held values, like my XYZ God? Can you explain in an abstract enough way staying within the laws of the universe, not being able to do just anything, not being willing to do just anything to change whatever in my life?
Which means what? A person's deepest held belief. So if we consider, and that's what I'm trying to propose, I think that's what Jordan Peterson proposed. It's what I believe. That's his God. He described it. He didn't say, I'm believing in your God. And that's what he'll never say, I don't think. And you can never say, I believe in your God. I can't say, I believe in your God. But you have a God. He's describing a process that is God. And I think that's what his book's about as well, because he's talking about the consciousness, the logos of individuals is important to this conversation, important to the discussion about God. Each individual, what you worship, who your God is your deepest held beliefs, your religion. Your religious beliefs are your deepest held beliefs and your deepest held values. As your values change, your God changes. And God in that realm. So from my perspective, if he is up there watching the whole thing and he can see our universe and he can see our galaxy and he can see us, and he can see our hearts and our thoughts and our intents, and he knows what each of us are like, he's going to operate within the God that we look at that minute. He's not going to come. Yeah, so I believe he's not going to come to someone in Isaiah's time. And, Isaiah had a hard time writing about the things he was seeing in vision. And maybe he was seeing airplanes and had to describe it, wings of eagles or something, however he described things. We don't know really what he was seeing because he was writing in language that he could understand. But God didn't bring him things that he couldn't conceive of. He didn't bring him a Minecraft model. And as he's dealing with each individual, he's going to bring things to you. And that's, I think, what he kind of points here. It's the calling. Each individual has a calling. There is a statement that's been talked about recently in the LDS Church about hear him. And it's how well you hear him personally, individually, that indicates your allegiance to God. Well, actually, we're going to talk about that. That's part of the trust thing in a couple of conversations down the road. I want to talk about trust, and this does relate to trust. God works with each individual, and he gives them something for them to calls them to something, calls their attention to it, and then sees if you're conscious to it and you're attentive to it and you think it's important and valuable to you, if it's part of your deepest held beliefs. And then that's what develops trust. So we'll talk about trust in that realm. That's the trust of God, but the trust of everyone else too. It's what you attend to that you develop your own trust in also, your own competence.
Now, you just said something is put in front of you, you're called to it, and if it matches with your deepest held values, then
what?
What did you say after that? Then perhaps you follow through with it. You know that this is a calling from your God, right?
And then what does it become? If you follow through with it and you dedicate a lot of time to it, what does it become?
It becomes your God?
Right. I believe it becomes your God. It is what you worship.
But it matched.
A definition of worship is what you spend your time on, what you spend most of your time thinking about and working on. That is what you're worshiping.
But it matched your values in the first place. Like, you wouldn't have followed through with it if it didn't already match, right?
Where do you get your values?
That's a good question. Where do you get your values?
Right. And we
your
should talk
upbringing.
about that. I'm trying to work through that. And I told you off camera, off conversation.
Uh-huh.
I've got 93 things that I think I could value. I'm trying to determine what I value most in some of those things.
We did talk about this before, or values, and where you get them
values
from.
is a big part of the 7 habits.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up which conversation that is.
It has to be the one about the 7 habits, because that's the base of that whole paradigm. It's identifying what paradigm you're under.
What is it called? I have to search on our website. Hold on.
Is it who you want to be?
Well, episode 37, we talked about the subjective nature of priorities and values. That was very recently. That was just last month.
That's needs and wants. 7 habits is 36.
Yeah. Well, no, that wasn't. That was 35. 36 was Revelation. So I think
35.
I think the priorities, get your priorities straight. That was the one where we identified that priorities and values are highly subjective. And where do you get your values from? Did we discover where we get our values from in that conversation?
I think that's as much as we discovered where you get truth from. And what did we discover about that? This conversation has given us a definition of truth, which is subjective. Depends on where you are at the point. And your values are the same. They're just as subjective. It depends on where you are at the point. Your values, well, depending on the circumstance, if you happen to be in prison, your values are going to be different than if you happen to be a CEO of a major company in the world. So the values are subjective to your circumstance.
To your circumstance and your upbringing and your cohorts, the people, your peers, the people you hang out with.
Your dominion, the people around you. And it'll change. It will change if enough things change around you. If you happen to get cancer, your values are going to change today. Immediately, they'll change. So it depends on what's happening. And whether at 3:00 this afternoon, there's something else happen. I mean, you may be caring for your dogs and something will happen that will change your values.
So that if my values are so easily changed like that, then they're not my deepest held values then.
Deepest held. No, because do you always have a deep? Did you lose the deep? It's just something else replaced that deepest held belief or value. When cancer shows up, cancer all of a sudden takes the deepest position.
No, it takes the highest priority, but still it has to fit. Whatever you do about it has to fit within your deepest held value. Like there's different things you can do when you get cancer. You can do the radiation treatment, or you can do the chemotherapy, or you can do them both together, or you can do nothing and just drink carrot juice. And there's many different ways that you can do. You're going to choose one of them. It's going to become your focus, but it's going to become your focus within the paradigm of your foundation, your foundational values. Like if you think carrot juice nutrition is not going to help you, then you're not going to do that because it doesn't fit within your values.
Your worldview, your paradigm. And that's where we had the problem in that discussion about the 7 Habits, episode 35, where we talked about the correct principles. Your values are based on your correct principles. How do you find those correct principles and which ones? So that's what I'm trying to work through now based on that discussion. And that was 6 weeks ago, from 3 months ago. I'm still working on what my correct values are, correct principles that I value most. I have things that I represent in my life. I live my life a certain way. And you could say that must be your values then. Your actions demonstrate your values. Or you can consciously try to say, I want my values to be this. I believe that this is the case I want to live. And so you try to change your behaviors to match.
So I think we've got 2 different definitions of values here. I think we have the surface level values, like what you were just saying, what do you value most in your life? But then there is your God value, and there's the one thing that you value most that governs how you deal with everything else in your life.
And that's a good question. I said this statement yesterday, and I wonder if it's true. Maybe you can help identify it. How you do one thing is how you do everything. Have you heard that before?
I might have, but it's not immediately rememberable.
How you do one thing is how you do everything. And that's what you're kind of pointing to. Your deepest value is how you do one thing. Everything that you do, you're going to do it this way based on that deepest value. And it's how you're going to approach everything, every other situation that comes up or task that you have or priority that you have, it will still be done the same way. So if your deepest value is hard work, I'm going to focus on what I do. If that's your deepest held value, you're going to focus on this. And then when you move to that, you're going to focus on that. So you're spending your time, but your value is always evident.
Yeah, and maybe some days you're hardworking in your backyard, and some other days you're hardworking in your office, and it doesn't mean that you value your backyard more than your office or either of them are your God. It's that hard work is really more of your God than the other things.
And so hard work being the principle, that's where you're identifying a principle that's your value as opposed to a thing or a location. And that's where what was the thing in 7 Habits? It's character focused or principle focused. Are you focused on people or situations, or are you focused on the principle behind all the situations? And then God is in your principles, or it's in your activities. If you're a character focused individual and you're just living your life for the pleasure of the moment, isn't the pleasure of the moment your God?
Yeah, if that's what you're living for, then that would be your God. And it doesn't matter what the moment is. If you're always seeking after the pleasure, then
that feel-good thing you're after is what you're after. Let's say someone's an alcoholic and they just are always looking to get that feel. You've got to live in that feeling of being under the influence of alcohol, and I can't exist if I don't have it. That is their God. And and so for my question from the perspective, and you kind of asked that, is it okay with you? Is God okay with you and with me having these different perspectives, the alcoholic having that perspective, the sex addict having that perspective? I mean, whoever it is, whatever they're doing, is God okay with it from his true position, dealing with our physical world, seeing us in this universe, in this galaxy, on this planet? Is he okay with those different perspectives about him?
And again, this is suggesting that God is that is the truth, the very basic what God is something that can look at everyone's beliefs and make a decision of whether he's okay with it or not.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Isn't that what you mean when you ask someone, do you believe in God? What do you mean when you ask that question?
Yeah, that's the package God that I would be asking about.
And anyone who asks that question is asking, and that's what Jordan Peterson, I think, is battling against. Anyone who asks that question is asking, do you believe in God that's up here among the universe, the supernatural being is what, it might be a generalist way to say what they're thinking. And he's trying to describe the God he believes in is from our perspective. A God from our perspective is different than the God from that supernatural perspective. That's what I think he's trying to point out.
Yeah. Do you think he kind of has a goal to get everyone to be thinking about God differently? Like, do you think we could evolve as a whole world population past thinking of God as one supernatural being into an idea of God being our deepest held values?
Like he's trying to promote something specifically?
I don't know if he consciously has this goal, but if it's the only way that he will talk about God, then maybe he feels like it's the only way that God should be talked about.
He's trying to point to the truth, which is subjective. I think that's where he and who is it that he was arguing truth with, objective and subjective truth?
Sam Harris
tried to state that there is objective truth. There is actually objective truth, and Jordan Peterson's statement is you can't have an objective truth. He summarizes it somewhat here. It is the denial and eradication of the logos of the individual. So he said that logos is important. Individual logos or individuals are important to society or to a God formation. It is the denial and eradication of the logos of the individual that produced the tyrannical totalitarian regimes of the 20th century. We have by no means risen above the power-mad and hedonistic delights of such temptations. So you kind of supposed in your question that Jordan Peterson has a hedonistic delight. He wants to be the purveyor of the truth of God to the world.
Yeah, maybe even subconsciously.
Does that make sense? Subconsciously or power mad, say, I've got the power. I've got the right way to describe it. And he wrote this book, We Who Wrestle with God, to identify this is the God we need to talk about. It's not the supreme being in the sky. It's the logos of the individual all mixed together. And I'm only using one paragraph there to describe, and there's 500 pages in this book. So one paragraph doesn't encapsulate his whole thought. I don't know that he's trying to gain power by that. He's just trying to describe what he sees as a potential answer from an individual perspective as opposed to from a God perspective, because we cannot write God's perspective. It's not possible for a finite world to write an infinite perspective.
Well, I can't write your perspective.
Right. You can't even write my perspective, and we're both here in the same room. Not even in the same room. We're quite a ways apart from each other right now.
Right. Our likenesses are in the same screen.
Same area on the same screen. I can see you and me right there.
Right there.
But it doesn't mean you can't say anything about me from my perspective. And we're trying to talk about each other's perspectives. So that's what conversation is. It's just identifying one's perspective to another. And we tend to happen to enjoy this. There may be others who don't enjoy this.
Well, there are others who don't enjoy this.
There are. There are too many words. You guys are just chewing on that. What is it? A phrase that I heard recently that may be true. You're killing a dead horse. Beating a dead horse is a standard thing. Beating a horse to death. You're beating a horse to death. That's what it was.
It isn't already dead yet, but
it's not dead.
It's almost
you're not beating
there.
a dead horse, but you're going to kill it, guaranteed, and you're killing it all the time. Not meaning a good thing.
Right. It's a negative thing, is what they're saying. So I do want to go back to the LDS definition of God, I suppose.
Okay. A standard doctrinal definition is what you're talking about. And doctrinal definitions do exist.
They do, because you can't have a religion based on an idea of God that is different for every single worshiper, right?
Unless you can. I mean, that's kind of the Unitarian belief as I understand it. They don't define anything. Everything's acceptable. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't studied it directly, but I believe you could create a belief system around pantheism, polytheism.
On the church's website, I searched what is God, and the top result is chapter 3 from the Doctrine of the Gospel study manual, God the Eternal Father. And it says, first, central to our faith as Latter-day Saints is a correct understanding of God the Father. All right, so that implies there is a correct understanding, and that means there's an incorrect understanding of what God is, who God is, maybe.
Okay. From that doctrinal standpoint.
From that doctrinal standpoint. It does say God is the supreme being in the universe. God is perfect in his person, character, and attributes, and I think nobody would disagree with that, even if the God is Minecraft in their life.
And that's the omniscient or omnipresent person.
The existence of God is a reality, and I don't think that anything that we've said, even regarding Jordan Peterson's theories, would dispute with that statement, right? God is the Father of all mankind. It says here, God is literally the Father of the spirits of all mankind.
Right, and that's a specific LDS belief, I believe.
It comes from Hebrews and Acts and Numbers. Those are the references.
The biblical references. The Father of spirits, right. Okay, so maybe it's not particular to the LDS faith. Yeah, that's right. The Father of your spirits is a general Christian belief. Are Muslims in the same boat that God, Allah, is the Father of the spiritual being that you are? I'm not sure about that, maybe.
And there was something here, it says, God is a holy, perfected personage with a body of flesh and bones. That is Moses, Doctrine and Covenants, and Matthew. Those are the references for that. So within the LDS paradigm, you are expected, even though perhaps every single member in the organization that consider themselves members of the organization have a different idea of what God is. It seems like the expectation is that you believe that God is the Father of your spirit, the literal Father of your spirit, and that he has a body of flesh and bones. And he is a he because he is the Father.
Right. And if the question were phrased that way, do you believe in this, the way you just phrased it? Yeah, I can accept. I can believe in that God. I can honor that God. Yeah, everything about that statement is true.
Fits within your God.
If you put the gun to your head, the gun would go off. I don't know.
Right.
Nothing changes about that being that's out there. So just based on every time I said, you got the supernatural being seeing our world and our universe, I believe in that being exactly the way you described it, that he has a tangible body of flesh and bones, as tangible as man's. It's a perfected, glorified body, and that at some point we'll have the opportunity to be immortal as well with a perfected body of flesh and bones with our spirit. And our spirit is something that preceded this earth and will succeed this earth and then be rejoined with the body at some point and be in that godly realm. And perhaps we will speak the godly language in that realm. I don't know that, but that's possible.
Is that God that you just stated belief in the same as your deepest held value?
That's what I wanted to touch on when you started with that. That's those people who wear their religion on their sleeves, and everything they do is, my Lord Jesus Christ, oh my God, is in charge of this. And they can't say anything, any sentence, every third word out of their mouth is God or Jesus Christ. And all glory and praise and honor be to the Father. You can believe that, but does that make you any better of a person because you say it all the time, because you wear it on your sleeve?
It makes it no, but that's not the question that you should be asking. It's not whether it makes you a better person or not. Is that the way that you should be as well because you say that God is your God too?
Does the God require it of you?
Does having it as your God require that behavior of you? Because if you're not behaving as if that is your God, then that must not be your God. You have another value that's deeper, like your value of not looking like a pious person. Maybe that's your God.
Not looking like a pious person. Yeah, instead of wearing a suit, being in the Senate, wear your hoodie and your your hoodie.
I don't know what you're referencing, but I imagine that was
John
real.
Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania, I think,
Uh-huh.
who never wears a suit and tie in all of his Senate duties in Congress. He's dressed down all the time. Looks like he's going to the gym, but he just does that. That's just his style. So you don't look pious like everyone else. You don't want to put on an air of greatness or an air of wearing it on your sleeve and having the right phylacteries and everything wrapped around the right way and the hem of your garment being the right length. And does God expect that of you? I tend to believe that from the way I discussed this from the start, the question, do you believe in God? God is not the subject of that sentence or that idea. You are. And it's the same. You may know the truth of all things. The truth doesn't matter. It's what you know that matters. It's your perspective. It's where you are at the moment, at that time, in that subjective environment circumstance. And if you believe in that, so that God, the physical being, supernatural, that has a body of flesh and bones, you can only spend your time and your attention. Your attention is on that, but it's not what I'm working on the next minute, the next hour. You look at my behaviors, your behaviors, anyone's behaviors, they're going to attend to what's important to them.
So the people that wear their religion on their sleeve and speak as if they're very connected with God every minute, every other word they say, that is the God that they believe in. But the God that you believe in doesn't need that from you.
That's been the question about glorifying God. So do you have to praise him verbally all the time to glorify him? And why does he need your glory anyway? We've talked about that a couple of times in the past. God doesn't require our praise for him to exist. God exists anyway, and you can know that and believe that. And from the standpoint that God is, he is in everything. Everything typifies of Christ. There's other scriptures identifying that everything points to Christ. But if you're extra pious and just spend your whole time only talking about one subject, then you're not experiencing life. I don't know. We live in this world. There is a tree of knowledge of good and evil.
You have an opinion of these people who are very pious then. You think that they are living the wrong world, the wrong life, because they're focused on one singular thing. They're hyper-focused. What is the term for that when you tunnel vision on just God, right? On just their God, their idea of what God is.
Well, it's the stories of the Pharisees, the Pharisaical checking of boxes, that this is the right way to live. I've determined it, and these are my highest values, and I'm going to do it. Like a monk moving to that monk's life. Is the monk wrong in doing that? So you're asking for what my opinion of that is. I think the monk is wrong doing that. To go to a monastic life, a single one thing you do, cut wood.
That would be very wrong for you to do, even though maybe the monk, it's the perfect thing for them. If they did that and they remain in that, that's perfect for them.
That's the definition we're playing around here, is that for them, that is God. That is the perfect thing. To God, though, from his heavens looking down, is that monk any different from me or from the person who spends all his time at the bar stool, whose God is liquor?
Back to assuming that this God is. No. Your God, does your God think that everyone else is okay believing in their gods? That's like what your question really is.
I almost see what you're saying there. Does the ABC God, so from ABC or GHI which is my God, is GHI. ABC is this guy. XYZ is some other person's, yours. You're coming in with XYZ. Does whatever number of God that is care that, the XYZ God, does he care that ABC exists or plays that way? Or you've got this JHI drunk at the bar stool every afternoon at 3:00. and he's there until 2 a.m., is XYZ God still happy with him and allow him to do what he's doing?
Well, does XYZ God believer think that that God would be upset? Do they believe that that God would be upset?
And that brings it back to that perspective. So from the human perspective, it does matter. The humans will say, you're a sinner, you're pious, you're too righteous, and we're perfect right here in this XYZ position. We're perfect. We have the right God, and you can join us in our party if you want to. But if you believe in ABC God, you're not welcome because you're wrong. I don't know that God, we talked about that in No Mortality and Eternal Life type, whenever that was, that we talked about there's not going to be animosity. I don't think God has an animosity. He's not after fear or comparison or punishment. That's part of the rules, but animosity in heaven. So once you gain your eternal position or gain that, I think that has to be currently. God has that current no animosity towards any of us for what we're choosing to do. It's just that guy's God is his liquor. And if God talks to him and gives him something to attract his attention, and it does, and he changes some little thing, say instead of drinking hard liquor, he goes to beer only. Maybe that's better for him. Or maybe when he's drunk, he can help a lot more people because he's more friendly, he's more open to talk to the people that need to hear the word of God through him. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's your God that is okay with all of that.
Yes, I believe so.
And you accept that. You understand that completely, that this God that you speak of that is okay, that is looking over the whole world and seeing everyone else's gods and is okay with it and thinks that it all melds with his true gospel, that's actually just you.
That's the fallacy, though. Just me. That's the problem of thinking that we understand something. If you think you understand it, you're wrong. Does nothing but dispute the hypocrisy of the religious enterprises. It's the limitations on God. If you feel like your God is limiting other people, I don't know that God is a limitation.
Your God.
My God, the God I believe in, doesn't have limits. He's limited this world because this is the world we're living in. So the 16-bit world of our Minecraft is what he's going to work with when he works with us. But that doesn't limit what he can do anywhere else, or that he hasn't created a 4-bit world in the Muslim environment. Yeah, I believe he has created another world in the Muslim environment. And the human beings misunderstanding each other, fight each other based on that comparison. There's no reason to fight based on that comparison. And that's where we talked about millennium. And in my world, in my view, my belief, in the millennium, it's going to mix together. And the Muslims will have to understand this is the Jesus Christ Muhammad didn't quite follow, but all the principles are the same. And so this is the Jesus Christ that Muhammad chose against when he chose the other side.
You have it right, and the Muslims have it wrong.
Is it possible that Gabriel will come back instead of Jesus Christ?
Yes.
And say, this is the millennium now? No. Yeah, I have it right.
Yeah, you have it.
That's my belief.
Okay.
That's where I stand. That's where I stand.
It is difficult to open your mind to consider that maybe you have it wrong and others have it right without losing your belief in what you have. That requires a change in your belief in order to think outside of your own beliefs.
And that's your deepest held values, your deepest held principles, your deepest held goals. And maybe it's somewhat what you were raised in. I mean, if a Muslim totally wouldn't even, someone who has never heard of Jesus Christ isn't going to have that opinion. Yeah, whatever the afterlife is in the Muslim world may be exactly what it is. And when we get there, we'll say, wow, this is cool. Exactly as they said.
Totally unexpected. I think that's most likely. Most likely you'll die. And if there are any more thoughts to be had from you, then it will be, this is not at all like I thought it was going to be. I think that's most likely how it would be. And now, by me saying
And
that,
that's what you predict? You're
I
predicting
have
it?
manifested that my after death is going to be not that.
Not that, or you're going to be surprised too?
No, I mean, that's a paradox. Like,
You have no presupposition. You have no presupposition of the afterlife because you don't necessarily have a belief one way or the other that it's going to happen. So when it occurs, you'll be there. But when it occurs, if it occurs, the only thing we know now, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. We talked about that a number of times. There may be people who still don't accept him as president, and will fight tooth and nail against anything that he tries to do, saying this is evil, this is wrong, this isn't the government. He's ruining things, breaking everything. There's actually quite a few people who believe that, and actually forcefully, and don't accept him as president, so they don't agree. They don't believe in the presidency of Donald Trump.
and because they don't believe, they choose not to comply.
Right. And does that bother Donald Trump at all as the object of that sentence? So their belief makes no difference to him as to whether they exist. I mean, what will make a difference to him is if they break the laws of the country and he has the rights, or the Department of Justice has the rights to convict him of something, they will. As long as you have an opinion contrary, that's fine with me as the president of this country. Hold the opinions you want to hold, but I'm going to do the best I can do in the job I've been hired to. We talked about that one other mayor, I believe, that was 76% of the people were against him. And he said, I'm doing the job I was elected to do. So it doesn't matter that 76% of the people are now against me. I'm in the job. I'm doing the job I was elected to do. And that's what I'm doing. That's all Donald Trump is saying. I was elected to do this job. I'm doing this job I was elected to do. That's what I promised I'd do. That's what I'm doing. I think that's likely the position that God's taking. Wherever he is, whatever it is, I'm doing the job I was required to do. It doesn't matter where your belief is on the earth.
Yeah. Do you think it would be more honest for you to include when you're speaking of your God, my God? That's a position my God would take.
Rather than God, the generic, the absolute God. And that may be why Dr. Peterson ended with, I believe, not this is the God to believe in. This is what I believe, my God. And I think that's what I've been talking about, because I have to agree that the Muslims believe in their God, that you believe in your God, the way that you see the world operating. And I believe in my God. And I can align it with certain things and be true to certain things, certain principles, based on how I see that belief. But it would be difficult for me to have a belief that says my God is the God and everyone else outside this narrow band of my perspective is in hell continually, forever. I can't be comfortable. My principles don't allow me to be comfortable with that belief. So my God has to be more open than that from his viewpoint, his perspective. But I still have a belief in a God. I don't want to not believe in a God.
Yeah, you don't want to. And so you're not going to.
I'm not going to, right? It's the value that I hold. So, and it is a choice that I have and a belief that I hold. And it's a belief everyone holds. And just like the alcoholic, it's not going to believe in a God that preaches from a pulpit. He's going to believe in a God that feeds him from a bottle. And it gives him the feeling that he needs all day long. And he appreciates that and he loves that. That's why he does it.
Yeah. Okay. I am out of time. My minute has run up. So
very good.
Close us out.
Well, thanks for joining with me and discussing this. I think we covered quite a few things of importance, and it seemed important to me, and hopefully it seems important to you and to all of you who are listening. doyouhaveaminutepodcast.com is the webpage. It has all of these on there, places for you to make comments. It's all searchable. So everything that we're talking about is part of history and part of the record. And we'll invite you to join us at any time. So until next time, and next time we are talking about experts an expert on God or something else.
Anything else.
What does expert mean? So we'll beat that horse to death next time. Join us and enjoy the the activity. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.